Look, we got to be real about what's happening right now because this week felt like a major turning point. Because right now, as we speak, people are lining up in Chicago to say goodbye to Reverend Jesse Jackson. He passed away last week on February 17th at age 84. And his health had been failing. It's been in decline for a while, but he still stayed active until the very end. And now that he's gone, it feels like the ending of an era. And when a famous person dies, I know that's a natural part of life, and it shows us that this ain't forever, and that we all are going to leave eventually. But still, at the same time, it's frightening because it's still the early part of the year, and we have no idea what's coming next or who else we're going to lose in 2026. And it's a reminder that we gotta give our heroes their flowers while they can still smell them. And Jesse's death brought a lot of memories for me from when I've seen him in the media throughout my life. Like I can remember watching an old '70s episode of Sesame Street as a kid, where Jesse was giving his "I am somebody" speech, while black, white, and foreign kids were repeating after him. And I thought that was pure and it was hopeful. And I mean, Jesse was a good dude overall. I mean, I know some people are going to bring up the mistakes he made. He wasn't perfect like none of us are. And I know people want to focus on the scandals like the cheating and him fathering a child outside of his marriage. But regardless of those mistakes, he still did so much good for the world. And that's what we need to be focusing on right now. And we need to stop talking about him like he was just another civil rights leader because Jesse Jackson was a genius who figured out how to hack the system to gain power. He ran for president in '84 and in '88, and folks thought he was just doing that for show when he really wasn't. He actually forced the Democratic Party to change the rules on how they pick a winner because without those rule changes that Jesse Jackson fought for in the '80s, then Barack Obama would have never had a path to beat Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary in 2008. So while Jesse ran, he was also rebuilding the ladder so someone else could climb it. But his power didn't come from an election. It all started with the blood on that uh, Memphis balcony at the Lorraine Motel in '68 when Dr. King was killed. Because when that happened, the whole world stopped, but Jesse moved. And that very next day, he was on TV wearing a turtleneck sweater that he claimed was stained with Dr. King's blood. And folks in that inner circle called him fake and a pretender because while they was busy chasing Dr. King's killer, Jesse was chasing the future. He understood a hard truth that in America, if you don't control the narrative, then you don't exist. And he took the torch by force, and he used that fire to burn a path into rooms where black men were never supposed to sit. And then they called him a race hustler and all that. But we got to look at the results from that because with Operation Push, Jesse Jackson figured out how to use the corporate shakedown to force big companies to finally pay black America what they were owed. Because he didn't just march for rights, he marched for contracts too. Because he went to the giants like Coca Cola, Burger King, the big banks, and he told corporate America, we spend billions on your sodas and your burgers, and you're making millions off of black pockets, but you ain't got no black executives. I mean, your supply chain is 100% white, your banks are 100% white, your boardrooms are nothing but ghosts. Fix the math or we'll stop the money. And he didn't ask for a handout. He forced and demanded a trade agreement. Now, was that a hustle? Maybe it was, but that hustle is the reason why thousands of black families finally got corporate jobs and moved into the middle class. He moved the fight from the sidewalk to the boardroom. And Jesse's genius wasn't just a U.S. thing, it was global. He walked into war zones like Syria and Iraq to rescue hostages when the government couldn't get it done. But he didn't do it alone. Him and Minister Farrakhan worked as a tag team. Farrakhan was the force. He could speak the hard truths that would get a regular politician counsel, while Jesse was the one who could walk through the front door and close the deal. They played both sides of the fence perfectly. They was kind of like the good cop, bad cop duo. And it proved that when the black community stands together, the whole world, not just Washington, D.C., is forced to listen. But Jesse wasn't just all business. The man had jokes too, because he was the first black presidential candidate that appeared on Saturday Night Live back in '84. He wasn't just a guest, he was also the host. And if you ever saw that video of him on SNL, you know that he was a natural. And the part that I really thought was funny was that SNL control room segment where he's doing his monologue, and then he gets interrupted by a buzzing noise. And instead of just ignoring it, he walks off the stage and marches straight to the SNL control room to find out what's going on. And as he's making his way on down there, those white technicians and producers behind the buttons get up and start hiding as all the black technicians and producers come out, sit down, and take their spot. Jesse walks in and starts looking around for the source of the noise, and found diversity in the control room. And that was funny. And most people remember the Weekend Update where he's preaching about green eggs and ham by Dr. Seuss, using that rhythmic preacher voice to read a kid's book. And I couldn't find too many other clips from that particular SNL episode. I know there's more, but the only other video I could find was a 30-second clip with Billy Crystal in blackface playing Sammy Davis Jr., which is wild to look back on now in 2026. And I think Jesse allowed that to happen because he was being a good sport about it to get his message across, since he was trying to win the election. He was being strategic about it. He wasn't there to be a comedian. He was really there to be president. Because back in '84, SNL was more than a TV show. It was the cultural gatekeeper. Because if you wanted to be seen as a serious candidate to the white suburban voters who didn't know you, you had to survive stuff like that. And it was almost like he was on a job interview. He was on national TV standing next to Billy Crystal in blackface because he was paying the entry fee to be taken seriously by a country that didn't want him. And even though he still didn't win the presidency, he lost to Reagan, you still got to respect the effort. And Jesse making a guest appearance on a different world, the TV show a few years later, that was a genius move too, because he did more than just give a speech. He sat on a dorm room sofa at a fictional college and talked to us where we lived. He bypassed the white news anchors and used a sitcom to tell black youth they were somebody. It was his way of hacking the culture to train the next generation of owners. And when the world turned its back on Michael Jackson during that trial back in '05, Jesse was the one of the few who stood on the front lines, for Michael. Because while the media was dogging Michael out and hunting him down, Jesse was right there in the courtroom calling out the bias. He didn't care about the bad press. He knew that if they could take down the biggest black star on the planet, they could take down anybody. And he was the shield for our heroes when they were at their lowest. And Jesse was so powerful, even him and Trump was cool, because Trump and Jesse wasn't always enemies. Because back in the 90s, they were actually allies. Trump wasn't the villain. He was a business partner. He even gave Jesse's Rainbow Push Coalition free office space on Wall Street because Trump wanted that cool factor. He wanted the credibility that only Jesse Jackson could provide. But the second Trump realized he didn't need Jesse to get what he wanted, he flipped. He launched the birther movement against Obama, turned his back on Jesse, and burnt the very bridge he used to cross over. And now in 2026, while we bury Jesse, Trump is sharing videos depicting Barack and Michelle Obama as apes. Because, just look how far we've fallen. Trump, Jesse's former buddy, is sharing videos comparing black people to apes. And we even watched Congressman Al Green being escorted out of the State of the Union just for holding a sign that said black people aren't apes. And that tells you everything you need to know about the progress we thought we had. It's a complete reversal of the progress that Jesse fought for. Because you even had Ilhan Omar yelling, you have killed Americans, which was the raw confrontational energy that Jesse Jackson used to have, and now that energy is being used towards Trump. And now, just look at Trump's behavior this month, and it just makes his tribute to Jesse Jackson feel completely fake. It seems like Trump is still obsessed with Obama even now, because in his post on Truth Social, where he's calling Jesse a good man with street smarts, Trump just couldn't help himself. He had to bring up that old hot mic moment from 2008, indirectly, the one where Jesse was caught being frustrated with Obama for talking down to black people. Trump used a funeral tribute to dig up an 18-year-old grudge just to take a shot at his rival. And it shows that for Trump, it wasn't about honoring a legend. It was all about scoring a point. And it just feels like the system has spent these last 18 years punishing folks who made the 2008 victory possible. And Jesse showed us how to plant the seeds. Obama showed us what happens when they bloom. But the 2020s are a cold reminder that if you don't own the land, those flowers can be uprooted in a single night. And we've spent the last decade watching the world's biggest reality show while the bridge Jesse Jackson built was catching fire behind us. Trump ain't just a villain in this story. He's the landlord showing us the eviction notice. And the message for the 2030s is clear. Being somebody is a start, but it ain't a destination. If you're a guest, you can be escorted out. It's time we stop asking for a seat at a table they're breaking on purpose. Jesse was the reminder that you are somebody. Now it's on us to make sure we own something. Don't let them sanitize the struggle. But this is Big Brother's Perspective. Rest in power, Reverend. I'm out. Peace.